Hey guys, I'm here today to do part 2 of my Christmas book haul. I'm so excited about this stack of books. I think I've got a really great mixture of books here, so I can't wait to talk to you guys about them. So firstly I have 2 non-fiction books, and this first one I've wanted since it came out in the US in 2016 and have been waiting for a UK publisher to pick it up. As far as I know they still haven't, so I just decided to pay a bit more than I would usually pay for a book to have this one shipped over. And that is White Rage, The Unspoken Truth of Our Racial Divide by Carol Anderson. Now, I've heard nothing but rave reviews about this one. It sounds phenomenal. I read a couple of excerpts and I think I saw her talk in a couple of videos and just thought the way she put all this across was so informative and understandable and just incredibly important content, obviously. So this follows since 1865 and the passage of the 13th Amendment, and it looks at the fact that every time African Americans have made an advancement in the American democracy, something has happened fueled by white rage, which has pulled that back. It takes us all the way up to the present day. So I'm hoping this will be, you know, an excellent read, and I think she's just had another book come out recently. I'm not sure if that's right though, but if I do enjoy this one then I will not wait again for a UK publisher to pick it up and I'll give this one a read. This is one of those things that, you know, isn't necessarily picked up in other countries because I guess it's quite US specific, so a UK publisher would probably be taking a risk to publish it, but I find US democracy and sort of social justice issues incredibly important and interesting, so definitely want to give this one a read. And this second one is another US published non-fiction book, and this one's just come out recently. This is The Reckonings by Lacey M. Johnson, and this is an essay collection. Now, I was first drawn to this because of the beautiful cover, not gonna lie, and then I looked into it and just thought this sounds like the exact sort of essay collection I want to be reading, and it's worked out quite well. I mean, I already wanted to read it, but I've actually just finished After the Eclipse by Sarah Perry, which I showed in my last Christmas book haul, which I'll link up here, and absolutely loved it. It's absolutely phenomenal. I've started my reading year on a 5-star read, which is amazing. And I always really think quite deliberately about justice and what justice means, and when there's some horrific crime that's sort of overtaking the news and people are saying, oh, that person deserves to die, or that person deserves never to see the light of day again, I like to really consider what we mean when we say those things and whether we really mean them, and whether we consider that behind the criminal there is an individual. So this is an essay collection about the fact that Lacey M. Johnson, I hadn't heard of her books before, but if I enjoy this I'll certainly go back and read the others. She brought out a memoir about the fact that she was kidnapped and horrifically abused by her then partner. And she said that whenever she went and did talks on this book, one of the questions she was always asked was, what would you like to happen to this man? You know, would you kill him if you could? All these sorts of things. And her answer was always no, and this is a collection of essays which explores the reason her answer is no, and explores what justice means, and sort of revenge versus compassion and mercy. And yeah, I find these endlessly fascinating topics, and I think they're really important things that we need to consider, and I think a lot of the time a lot of us think, oh, there's people who have jobs to think about these things and we don't need to, but I think we really do. So yeah, I'm really hoping to enjoy this one, and I'm going to pick this one up very soon because I think following After the Eclipse it's a perfect book to read next. So there's that one. And then now on to all the fiction I have. So firstly we have this tiny little one, it's super cute. This is Mr. Salary by Sally Rooney. Faber have recently brought out this selection of little short stories that they put in these little pamphlets. Now, I knew that Sally Rooney had a couple of short stories that have been published in various literary journals, and I don't know if they'll ever be pulled together in a short story collection. I hope so, I'd love that. I don't think there's quite enough yet. But for now, while this is out there, I didn't want to wait for something that may never happen, so I thought I would pick this one up. I have no idea what it's about. I mean, it's tiny. It's like 30 pages long, and you know, it's quite small, so I'm going to probably read this one later today. So there's that, but I just wanted to read everything that Sally Rooney had out there, so I thought I'd pick that one up. This one is At Hawthorne Time by Melissa Harrison. I read All Among the Barley by her in 2018, and then I saw her do a talk, and I really enjoyed All Among the Barley. I thought it was a beautiful novel, and when she spoke about her other novels at the talk, I just thought, God, you know, I want to pick them all up. So I just had a little look into them, and to be honest, I could have picked any up. Like, I thought they all sounded equally interesting, but in the end I think probably I just preferred this title over the others, so I went for this one. So this follows a couple called Howard and Kitty, which I think are quite cute names. They've moved to a village after a life spent in London and their marriage is falling apart. And then it follows another person called Jamie who's lived in the village for all of his life, and a land worker called Jack. And it's about all these people's lives and how they interlock. And I think it's sort of a commentary on the countryside and the type of people who live in these remote rural locations and how they form a community. And I loved her writing style. She writes absolutely exquisitely about the countryside and nature. So I'm hoping to really enjoy this one. And then another British novel I have is Slit of a Fish by Amy Arnold. So I stumbled across this one when I was just looking into books online, and I don't really know how I missed it because it's published by And Other Stories. They predominantly publish translated fiction. They're a UK indie press. But this one is actually, it won the Northern Book Prize, which I hadn't even heard of and need to look into. And I think I've said quite a lot that I really like reading British fiction, especially when it's quite grounded in nature and or working class families. And I find it's really hard to, or not really hard, it's not as easy to find fiction that's not set in London. And I think that's quite acknowledged in most countries, you know, there's a lot of fiction that focuses on the country's capital. But in particular it's quite hard to find fiction set in northern England, and I want to read more of that. So this follows a mother and a daughter and their story, and I believe the mother may have some mental health problems, and it's about something that she does that has lots of repercussions for her child. I don't know if it's a daughter or a son actually, unsure, but I think this is going to be really sort of lyrical and almost edging into, feels like it could be fabulous fiction. I don't think it is, but I think the way this author writes feels quite magical, and based on the blurb on the back, and I read the first few pages, and it seemed really playful, the writing style, and playing with words and playing with sort of magical imagery, so I'm hoping to enjoy that one. And then the next one I think is also going to be a novel that really plays with words, and I decided to pick up the, I think this is the US edition, because I just think it's so much prettier than the UK edition, so that's my shallow side coming out. So this is Freshwater by, and I apologise for this, Awakey Emezi? I'm not sure. So I think this came out, maybe, it may have only came out in 2017 I think. It's a guess, but it came out fairly recently. And this is a debut novel for an astonishing young writer. It tells the story of Ada, an unusual child who is a source of deep concern to her southern Nigerian family. And it says she's born with one foot on the other side. She begins to develop separate cells within her as she grows into adulthood, and then she travels to America for college, and this traumatic event makes those cells become sort of really separate, and it says sort of powerful and potentially dangerous. I think this is a very stylised novel, and again I think it will be really lyrical and play with words. I'm unsure if I'll find it hard going, and I've heard really mixed reviews about this one. Some people really loved it and thought it was super clever, some people found it really hard work, but I thought I would give it a go because it sounds really intriguing. Then we have, and I've wanted to pick this novel up for about 4 years, and that's because there was quite a few Canadian booktubers, and all those people now don't upload booktube videos, which is a real shame, and I used to really love the channels, who I heard rave about this one, and this is Bottle Rocket Hearts by Zoe Whitall. And I never picked it up because it was super expensive for, like, so this has arrived, and it's about 190 pages, and you can probably tell it's quite small, but I could never find it for less than £20 online, and I was like, I just can't. £20 is like an awful lot of money, and that was to get it second hand, so I never took the risk. And then recently I saw it dropped to about half that price second hand, so I took the risk and ordered it. So this is set in 1995 in Quebec and Montreal in Canada, and it follows a group of sort of friends, roommates, as they experience love and friendship throughout the 90s. And yeah, just hoping to really enjoy this one, and based on what I heard those booktubers say, it sounded like a really fun novel, so there's that one. And I really like that 90s cover, I think it's great. And then I have one book which hasn't actually arrived. I think it's going to arrive in a few days because, again, I got it shipped. A lot of these were shipped over from the US, and that is A Matka by Karen Tidbeck. So I read this author's short story collection and really enjoyed it. She writes incredibly descriptive lyrical stories, and the short story collection was mainly focused on, I guess, like bizarro fiction or fairy tale, and like original fairy tales, and they were quite twisted and dark, whereas this novel is a sci-fi. It's been out for a couple of years and I really liked the sound of it when it came out. So it says, Vanja, an information assistant, is sent from her home city of Vessery to the austere winter colony of Amatka with an assignment to collect intelligence for the government. Immediately she feels that something strange is going on, people are acting oddly, and citizens are monitored by signs of subversion. In Karen Tidbeck's world, everyone is a suspect, no one is safe, and nothing, not even language, nor the very fabric of reality, can be taken for granted. So yeah, I'd pretty much pick up anything that this author brought out, but I think that sounds like a really innovative and intriguing idea for a novel, so I'm looking forward to that one. So next I have 3 fantasy novels, and they're all the first book in a series written by a female author. Now, I love fantasy when I get stuck into it, but for whatever reason I don't pick it up as often as I should. I think a lot of that is because the sort of fantasy I enjoy I find really hard to sort of source, and I do quite a lot of research into it and just really struggle. And when I ask for recommendations of other people or go and look at other lists, the same ones come up again and again, and I just really struggle to find other fantasy books. So the sort of fantasy I enjoy is really slow-paced, character-focused fantasy. I don't like it to be too like end of the world situation. I find that a little bit too dramatic. I like it to be a bit more sort of small scale than that. Although I really enjoy Robin Hobb, and I guess a lot of her books are a little bit end of the worldy. And I like fantasy books that have, you know, at least 50% of the main characters being women, because majority of fantasy is not, that's not the case. You get maybe one female character in the whole book and she's usually sexually assaulted. So I just am fed up with reading about that. So I tend to go for fantasy books that have a female protagonist, and I just find it really hard to find those sort of books. However, I've recently been hearing Jean talk about quite a lot of fantasy books, and also Chris, so I'll link both their channels down below. And they've inspired me to try again and also to look further back. So I didn't look at fantasy that wasn't newly published, because my concerns were that it would be even more gender stereotyped or tropey if it was published, you know, in the 90s or the 80s. But I've decided that there has always been some amazing people out there who were avoiding tropes even in the 80s and 90s. So I'm going to try out some more fantasy. So firstly, I recently picked up a Juliet Maria book and absolutely loved it, because I heard Jean rave about her this year, and I heard Jean talk about this series as well recently, and so I decided to start another series by this author, and that is the Blackthorn and Grimm series. So this is the first book in that series, called Dreamer's Pool. Now this is quite odd in the respect that I wouldn't usually think I would like a novel that looked like this, like not like it, but as in like the cover. Actually, when this arrived, I do really like this cover, and I find it quite cute, this mass magnet paperback, so I'm completely fine with this. So from what I heard from Jean, there's Blackthorn, who is some sort of like witch or healer, and she has a friend who, it says he's a former prison mate, a silent hulk of a man called Grimm. And they are both sent on some sort of quest, and then some prince becomes involved. I'm not really sure. But I wanted to just read all of the Juliet Marillier, so I decided to pick this one up. And then the next one, this one's because Chris is starting an amazing book club this year, and it starts this month in January, and it's a fantasy book club that's entirely focused on fantasy books written by female authors. And I will link the Goodreads group down below. I'm so excited, I'm going to try and participate every month. And the January book is Black Sun Rising by Celia Friedman, and so I thought I would pick this one up and join in. To be honest, I didn't even read the blurb. Like, I heard Chris say that he was doing this book club, I heard him say this was the novel for January, I bought it, and then it arrived and I was like, I should probably check what it's about. So I think this may be like a little bit, this sounds, the back's quite detailed to be honest, so I don't really know, but it does say that it's a seismically active yet beautiful world, and it's been settled by colonists from far distant Earth, so perhaps it's a little bit sci-fi as well. The Fae are involved, there's some sort of epic battle, and I think we follow several characters. 4 people: priest, adept, apprentice and sorcerer, are all about to be thrown together for a mission that will force them to confront an evil beyond their imagining. So it does sound quite old school fantasy, but I'm going to give it a go because it's got really, you know, great reviews, and I trust Chris to have selected some interesting books. So there's that one. And then this next one was because I was using that Goodreads tool where you click on a book that you've enjoyed and you see what it recommends. So I was clicking on Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier and just seeing what else came up. And this was one of the books that came up. Now, funnily enough, it had a different cover. And so I didn't recognise that I'd seen Jean haul this earlier in the year, and I was like, oh, I like the sound of that one, I'm going to give it a go. And then when I went online to order it, this is the cover that came up, and I was like, oh, I have heard of that because I've seen Jean haul this one. So that is Green Rider by Kristen Britton, and I do really like these re-release editions. They're a lot nicer than the original ones. Now, some of the negative reviews I saw about this on Goodreads were that people said it was too slow and almost like just not enough conflict. Those don't seem like things I would have issues with, so I picked it up anyway. So this is about a young girl who's out in the woods, and this nameless rider stumbles upon her near death's door, and he says he was working for this elite squad crew, I don't know, who deliver secret messages to, I think, the king, and this message is super important, and then so she takes on that task, and we follow her throughout all these books as she becomes one of these riders. I think that's as much as I know. This one is about 550 pages, and I'm very intrigued to give this one a go as well. And then these next few are sort of, I guess, what you'd class as like literary sci-fi. So I always want to read more sci-fi, and then a lot of it does just sound very action focused, which isn't for me. So what I decided to do is to lean more towards speculative and dystopian, because I do enjoy those things. So I have here Severance by Ling Ma. Now this isn't actually published yet in the UK, I don't know when it will be, so I think I have here the Australian edition. I just went online and this is the one I could find. So I've seen quite a few US booktubers talk about this one recently and say how interesting it is. So this follows our main character, who's a millennial drone self-sequestered in a Manhattan office tower, and she's devoted to her routine, and then a plague sweeps the area, and so she joins a small group of survivors on their way to a facility, and it's sort of, I think it might be sort of like a satire on routine and contemporary living, and how that is, you know, completely disrupted by something like, you know, a widespread plague. So yeah, don't really know what to expect, but I heard a lot of buzz about this one and just felt like reading some more dystopian really, so there is that one. And then I saw the lovely Victoria from Eve's Alexandria haul this one, and as soon as she said what it was about, I was like, I need it, and I just went online and added it to my list, and as soon as I got some money for Christmas, I bought this one, and that is Water and Glass by Abby Curtis. So this sounds amazing. This follows a few female scientists who I think are on some sort of, yeah, submarine, and they collected a group of animals because they thought the world was sort of coming to an end, and they brought them on board, and at the point we're entering the novel, the Asian elephant is about to give birth. She was pregnant before she arrived on the submarine, and now she's about to give birth. And it says this is a thrilling dystopian tale about human nature and the animal world under great pressure and in enclosed spaces. So yeah, this sounds like it could be really good, so I just picked this one up straight away. There's that one, and this is one I've wanted for a couple of years, so I'm so glad I eventually picked it up, and when I read the first few pages I really liked it, so I'm glad I took the plunge with this one. And this is called Good Morning Midnight by Lily Brooks Dalton, and this is following the world after something's happened. I don't think you're ever really told what, and it follows two separate people who are living on. So we follow Augustine, a brilliant ageing scientist, and he is living alone, and then he discovers a mysterious child, and he's trying to establish contact to find someone to give this child to. And then in another area we have a divorced astronaut who is on board a flight that's returning from Jupiter, and they're about to come back and sort of find out what's happened, I think. Based on people's reviews, this is really slow and character focused. and there's lots of sort of descriptive writing about the landscape and space, so I'm down with all those things. So there's that one. So I think I've got a really good selection, and I feel like I've got some types of books that I was missing from my shelf. So I feel like I was lacking a bit of epic fantasy, and also lacking like more sci-fi dystopian novels, so I'm really glad that I've got a bit of a mixture there. So let me know if you've read any of these, or if you have any other recommendations. I'd love to know, and also let me know if you like the sound of any of these and you'll be picking them up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!